Thomas Ha and Kapil. So one moment while I organize my quick notes, forgive me. So, my name is Maya Bland, and I am the Global Market Access Track Chair for this year's iSpice IEEE Product Safety Symposium 2021. I welcome you all to this event. We are really thankful for all the great presenters and great attendance. This presentation that you are in now will cover India requirements. We have two presenters. We have Thomas Ha and Kapil. And I'd like to just to read a brief introduction of both wonderful presenters. So Thomas Ha has 20 plus years of product safety and regulatory compliance experience and is a partner with G&M Compliance Incorporated, located in the city of Orange, California. Global G&M Compliance Laboratory provides product safety, EMC, EMI testing, and consulting. They assist clients with the certification of UL, CSA, CE, EN, IEC, FCC, Belcor, European, China, South Korea, Russia, and various international standards. Thomas is currently responsible for business development for G&M Compliance. He holds a bachelor's in science degree in electrical engineering and an MBA in business administration. He's a member of IEEE Product Safety Society and Society of Business Incubators and IAEI, International Association of Electrical Inspectors. Welcome, Thomas. And then I'd like to also introduce you to Kapil. Kapil is the director of G&M's India office located in Pune. He has over 20 years, 6 years of working experience in Germany, of knowledge gained in the test and development sector in the area of project management, product validation, testing simulation, and safety in various MNC companies in India and abroad. Kapil has successfully delivered complex projects for Indian, US, and European engineering companies in conducting various tests for different products with significant involvement in automotive transportation. He has wide range of knowledge of test equipment, sensors, and data, and acquisition systems with the expertise of testing components, and has worked with many technical service organizations and labs for approvals for India, US, Chinese, and European markets. So welcome both, and I will leave the floor to you to continue on this wonderful next topic.
Thank you, Manja. Thank you for the $1 million introduction. This is Thomas, and yeah, we really miss everybody, and hopefully we can get together next year, and hopefully everyone's staying safe. Well, thank you for attending. Actually, I was the one who originally was going to do the presentation, but since we have Kapil, he's available, and he's actually in Pune, India right now. It's a little late for him, but so he will actually be doing the presentation, and I will jump in if there's any Q&A or anything like that. But Kapil is the expert. He's been doing this for a long time. So for those of you that we did pretty much the same presentation last year. There's really not a lot of new changes because of the pandemic from 2020. But we want to highlight three areas that, we've been doing this pretty much, the BIS since it started 6 or 8 years ago. And three things that we commonly see that are pain points. Number one is factory. A lot of our customers use contract manufacturers, and the fact that the BIS system does not currently today address that issue because contract manufacturers for multiple companies. And Kapil will go into a little detail when he gets to that point. So that's pain point number one. Pain point number two is the authorized Indian representative. So for companies that do not have a presence or a business entity in India, they need to assign an AIR, authorized Indian representative. And that's really important area that we want to highlight for you guys today. I get an email almost every day from some companies in India that offers BIS, and it obviously the pricing is very competitive, but one thing is that, if they're a fly-by-night company, if they become your authorized Indian representative, again, if you don't have a business entity in India, then if they disappear, then your file will sort of be stuck in no man's land. So we'll go over that. And the last thing is the STPI, which is the process to follow for depositing funds for BIS market surveillance. So again, Kapil will go through all that. So Kapil, go ahead and start your presentation, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end to do some Q&A.
Thanks, Amartya. Thanks, Tom. And good morning, everyone here. My name is Kapil Sapru, and my introduction is already done. Let us quickly jump onto the topic. I'm here going to go on the topic, basically main certifications of BIS WPC, and we'll touch a little bit of TEC if the time permits. Otherwise, the main topic is basically the BIS and the WPC. So a bit quick overview of the Indian market, because I think it is very difficult right now for the product companies to ignore Indian market, because the market is growing by leaps and bounds every year. Especially my focus is mostly here about electronics. So if you can see everything in terms of electronic systems market is going to grow by fiscal year 25 to $160 billion. Then the electronic industry as such is going to grow to $540 billion in fiscal 25. And the whole electronic manufacturing service industry is also going to grow to $152 billion by 2025, just to give an overview. And probably India is basically also getting into kind of in global ranks where we are the fastest growing app market. We are the largest, highest number of internet users. We are the second largest telecom network. So we are basically ranking 1 and 2 because the main advantage is basically people around us. We have good amount of people here in the country, which is basically our leverage for most of the business and most of the service industry what we have in India. About BIS, basically, this is basically about the safety certification, and it is being governed by BIS. BIS itself is basically an institute here in India, which basically take care of setting up standards. They also take up these certifications, and they also do a lot of many other things in the areas of quality certifications and standard overviews. And even they have been talking to many international organizations who set up test standards. So all of this basically started from July 2013. So this is actually actually 8th year in this BIS certification scheme. Basically started with 15 electronic products, and then slowly there came up different lists. And initially it was first list and second list, and totally now we have 5 lists basically of the electronic products. Plus there are some more lists which are basically related to solar, which are basically related to electrical, and which are basically related to chemicals. But here we will focus mostly on ITE, audio video products, which are basically electrical in nature. And also BIS is basically also needed on components also. So let us say, as an example, let us say you have a server and it uses a power supply, then power supply needs also BIS. Let us say you have a mobile and you also have batteries in it, then cell and battery also needs a BIS before you get the BIS certified for the mobile. So and most important is this all the certification schemes are governed by IS standards. Some of the IS standards are basically very similar to IEC, but some have a bit of a change as per the Indian conditions. And the first and foremost is basically what we help the product companies is basically into first check whether the product falls into the mandatory category or not. They provide us technical brochure, HS codes, and some more details about rating, labeling, and if they have the old report of CB or any other report, which will help us to identify if the product is mandatory. And if it is mandatory, then this BIS certification is a must before you try to sell the product in the India market. So all this basically was introduced by Department of Electronics and Information Technology. At that time, when it was in 2013, that department name was DT, but slowly they changed their name branding to MeitY. So now it is MITI and BIS who are working together to standard this process. They are releasing new list, new items. So this is all basically done by MITI and BIS. And the main driver, or you can say the, like we have sun in the solar system, similarly for the BIS, for BIS registration, what is basically the sun in there and what is the centerpiece is basically the factory. So the factory is basically has to apply for the registration. They need to submit a lot of documents. So factory is basically the core of this. That is what Tom also said about this factory. And probably in US, these factories are probably located either in US, but majority in maybe Europe, Eastern Europe, and China, or some parts of Southeast Asia. So there also sometimes it becomes critical to apply for BIS, but we have good experience of what we normally consult our clients. And then second important is brand name. So even if the factory is Asia based, let us say India is a factory of an US, but then R&D and the product and the brand is basically US, but you can also register equally brand also. So that means XYZ factory in India will be the factory, and the brand will be XYZ or ABC of the US, and the registration will be done in the same way, so that the brand also will keep its name intact in the registration process. And then the product type. Product type means basically, is it a ADP, is it a battery, is it an adapter, it is what kind of product it is. So basically these three are basically what define the BIS registration, but the core is basically the factory. So initially the registration process starts with BIS gives a registration for 2 years, and then it is basically every 2 years you need to renew. There is very less paperwork nowadays because most of the process has gone digital now. I will also explain the new process. So it is mostly that we will prepare some renewal documents, but the renewal is probably very easy and quick to do. And probably the best part is that if any factory is a very big in terms of production and in terms of models, they have a lot of models, especially in lighting industry, and in terms of batteries and cells. Sometimes you have a lot of models, and if you follow some typical series guideline, you can also add multiple models in one report, so that you don't need to test every model. So this is basically an advantage here. So you need not to test every model. If it falls into the family, and we can make from product family, so you can actually test a family together, and this should comprise of 10 models. Sometimes more also, depends on the product type. So you can make a family and do the testing, so that the testing has not to be repeated for every and each model. So this is basically a quick overview of the lists which have been circulated from BIS and MITI from time to time. So you can see laptops, scanners, electronic games, wireless keyboards, electronic music systems, amplifiers, and there is also some of the products, especially power cables, which contain the AC current, and MCBs. If some products also have MCBs, they also have to be registered with BIS, but that is basically under a different registration. So even if your product is basically coming under CRS, but if it is using a power cable, obviously it will. So that power cable has to be getting certified by another scheme of BIS, which is basically called BIS ISI. So just to cover here this point, but then if somebody would need more details, they can get in touch with us. We also have a web page designed especially for BIS ISI on our website. You can have a look on it, what it is all about. So this is basically a list 1. Then this is basically a list 2, different products again. Then this is basically a list 3, different products again. List 4 was released recently in year 2020. So it got some extensions. Finally, it is now mandatory overall. And the list 5 is basically also released, and now it is basically, there were some extensions given to it because of Corona, and because businesses were not doing good, so they requested MITI and BIS to postpone this mandatory date. So now this mandatory date has been pushed already 2 times. So now this is all mandatory from 1st October. That means maybe probably in the next 2 weeks, this will be mandatory, all the products. So this contains wireless microphone, cameras, webcams, Bluetooth speakers, smart speakers, video cameras, webcams for finished products, and like that. So here a quick overview of the process. So what I said before, it basically starts with the manufacturer. So the factory, the manufacturer, we will start the application process. We will collect some documents, prepare the portal of that factory. So the portal is very important because everything is done through portal. So even if you have to put a test request, that has to be done through a portal. If you have to upload, if the lab has to upload the report, that has to be through the portal. If you have to do the registration, once you are done with the testing, that has to happen in the portal. So once the portal is created and the samples are in here in India, and in this process in BIS, in-country testing is still mandatory. So we will not be able to, at the moment, the processes, we cannot test in any other country and still do the registration process. But yes, if you have a CB report, that helps, that facilitates, but it is not must to have. So that basically CB report helps us in the CCL and helps the lab to a little bit check what was the rating, check the other things if they want some technical information, but it is not mandatory. So in-country testing is must. So the samples have to arrive in India. So they will go to the local test lab, and probably the AIR, what has been what Tom also gave a hint, the AIR is very important. So AIR should be any Indian entity. So it can be the factory office in India if they have a factory office. It can be also the brand office in India if any brand is having office in India. And if not, then it has to be a third party AIR, but it has to be an Indian entity. So what Tom told, that we have to be a little bit cautious because we have been seeing that there are a lot of companies into consulting and giving registrations, and many factories don't do the due diligence about this AIR, and we have seen some cases where the AIR was not a very reasonable guy. So something happened to his business, and then he winded up his whole business and went off. These kind of problems may happen. So you need to find a very that kind of company who is basically very legitimate, who is basically into this business, and who has to be in the long run into the business. So the selection process of AIR is very important. So once the selection of AIR is done, a test lab is done, testing is done, then probably everything is basically submitted. The documents, testing, a report, all of that is basically submitted to the BIS through the portal, and what they review that file, they review that documents, and then probably if there is any query, they need additional documents, they will request that. If the file is really complete, they don't need anything, they will issue the R number. Basically, the R number is basically the registration number, and then we can use that R number and the BIS logo on our product. The labeling can be done, and this is basically this basically completes the process. And what also Tom talked about is basically the STPR deposit of BIS surveillance. So this is basically an aligned process when the BIS registration is done. So the STPR deposit has to be done so that we remain into the process. We don't divert from the process, as it is being already said that once the registration is done, so the surveillance fee has to be paid in advance by the factory. So here we take a case studies about one use server, basically why it contains a power cord and power supply. So what I told before also. So if it has a power cord and a power supply, remember that the power supply ISO has to be BIS certified with the same kind of a scheme, CRS scheme. And if it has a power cord, that has to be also certified by BIS, but it is a different scheme. It's called BIS ISI scheme. So this basically is like we prepare basically some documents initially, like company name, product description, model numbers, and the documents will be revised. CB report is not required, what I told before, but it is good to have. There is no EMC requirements in the BIS or CRS scheme at the moment, so it's all about safety. So the transition in Europe for 62368, here also the standard is actually ready. It is called IS/IEC 62368. But at the moment there is no real timeline in the BIS which has been circulated to us in terms of when this will be mandatory or when the transition period will start. So at the moment we are still working with the old standards of 60950 and 6236 and 60950. And also PCB board and the plastic material has to be flammable proof. We need also the schematic of the battery production circuitry. We need those kind of documents, especially on the motherboard. This scheme does not need any factory inspection. So the auditor will not at all come to the factory. So the process is that there is no audit as such. But what I told you about the BIS ISI scheme for cables and for MCPs, there is basically a factory inspection. So the auditor from India will go to the factory to India, US, or it will go to Europe, or it will go to China, wherever the factory is located. Three basic steps in terms of, but they are very broad. So first is we start with the documentation, submit samples and do the testing, and then finally the BIS mark and the labeling, and the last small step to be done after that is basically this BIS surveillance, because that is also very important, because this is basically very random. So BIS and STPR picks up any random R numbers which will undergo surveillance, and this is all random. This is all electronic, like a lottery system. So they pick up these numbers randomly and then send them a letter that way you are being nominated for the BIS surveillance. So how we basically do the BIS documentation, basically we will prepare some initial questionnaire forms and request the factory to fill all the documents. Then we will need additional documents about production flow chart, we will need some procedures, manuals, CB reports, business licenses, ISO license of ISO 9001, labels, and factory organization chart, top management names, so that this can be entered into the BIS portal. Same here in terms of further on the BIS documents, like product name, model number, product description, basic installation, operating instruction, because these are also important for the lab. So the lab will need all the technical documents which are important for them. First is they have to also run the product, and second is also they need to also use the product in a very safe condition. So you may need to also provide the safety checklist, your safety documents which are to be used, so because they need to use that as a document to conduct testing. And about if the equipment is being certified, a formal differences between if you are adding a little bit of more model numbers, what I told that you can add 10 different models into it, then what are the differences between these models, and especially this power cable. So this is basically a very quick overview, like document information, what is needed, manufacturer name, ratings, brand name, critical component list is very important, label, and then critical components, and then BIS power cord is needed, business licenses, user manual is needed, PCB layout is needed, schematic is needed. That is basically needed by BIS, and also from some documents are also needed from the test lab. So once we submit the samples for testing, this is all basically done by the CRS portal. So in CRS portal we will basically generate a QR code, and the request will automatically go to a selected lab which has been selected through the portal. So factory can select a lab, and then that request will electronically go to the lab, and the lab can see the request and then accept it like that. Here, only thing is that what we have experienced, that be careful about custom clearance issue. Make the documentation very right, that these samples are only for testing; they are not for sale. Sometimes we miss putting this information on the invoice and the shipping documents, and these samples get held up while they are here. So if we don't take care about that, these samples are, and sometimes the customs also ask for the letter from the lab, which is the lab which is going to conduct the test. So they may need also a letter from the lab sometimes, just to be very sure that these samples are really for the testing. So lab may have to also cooperate with the factory in terms of giving some letter that yes, we will be taking care of these test products, and we will be testing it for the BIS only, not for any other purpose. Normally, it depends on product to product. So here, example, basically our case study is about the server. So we actually need one sample for testing, but we just tell customers that to keep two samples. Sometimes if there is any problem with the logistics or we could not run the sample or something comes up, we can use another one so that we don't miss on the timeline. So I think what we have is we have a very good tie-up here in India in terms of importer of record who will be here, who will take care of samples. We have storage system here. We can keep the samples here in advance. Sometimes it also happens that we get the samples from US to India or from any other country in advance, so that we don't want to miss on the timeline. And then once everything is ready, we set up the portal. Our samples are already here, and then we jump quickly on the portal, put the test request, and the samples are delivered to the test lab very quickly. And we have also done for many customers that we have done a CARNet route for the samples, where the samples are basically a bit costly. And they are kind of very unique in terms of construction. So we also can use CARNet, where we can also think of saving taxes and custom duties. This is something also what we can do. This is a typical BIS marking. The logo is basically this kind of logo, which is on the right hand side, basically about how the logo should be there. There should be written as what is the IS standard number and its equivalent in IEC, and then the R number here. You can see it is R-XXXXX. That this is the number which is the final number to be given once the registration is done, and then we have to also write www.bis.co.in. This is basically a recent change in 2019 that this web address has to be also put in under the label. So this is basically the kind of a label of what you need to add on the product box, and even on the bigger box where all these products are packed in. So with the use of label should be very proper. So if you minimize the use of label only on the product, not on the box, then probably sometimes they open up the boxes and then they scrutinize it, and sometimes the product gets also damaged. So better to put the label on the box, on the product, and on the bigger box where all these boxes are packed in. This is basically like what BIS did, a kind of a digital change in the smart registration process in 2019. So everything is basically through the portal now. So very few documents, still some documents are basically legal in nature, like notarized and legal in nature. They are to be sent original, but rest is like where the factory has to sign stamp. Those are all made in by us in terms of, and then they are printed and they are signed and stamped. Those kind of documents can be done. Those kind of document submission can be done online. There is no need to send couriers or call across from a factory to India. But some legal documents are there still in the process, which has to be done in India only, and those have to be submitted as a soft copy. So this is basically a kind of an elimination of all those hard copies in this, and the test request, everything is basically digital. So there is very minimum hard copies needed at the moment. And even the renewal process, and even if you want to add any other new generation model, even second year or third year or fourth year, whenever you are ready with a new generation model, that inclusion is also very online. So you need not to, only thing is testing will be done still in the country, but rest of the documentation is still online. So this is basically like some of the things of smart registration, like address verification is important. Like when we create the portal, this TRF and QR code is what I told you is basically from the samples are in India. Advanced booking of samples is not possible because you need to create the QR code, put it on the sample, deliver it to the lab. And the process is very electronic now. You cannot do a lot of changes after the request has been put in. So you cannot say that now I want to change my rating because my rating is different. I was a bit confused initially when I gave the request. So that basically you will waste a lot of time. You need to cancel the old request. You need to explain to the lab why this was happened, and I think there is a lot of changes. So it is basically going on to a right first time kind of approach. So factory, technical documents, portal, everything has to be right first time. Otherwise, any minor mistake or any minor thing will kill the timeline of the project. So if you can see, lack of document may force the lab to cancel the project since they must meet the timeline. So this is basically need why it was needed, because it was basically automated process flow. This is basically kind of an initiative of India from Digital India on a lot of government websites, helping load assessments for labs and BIS, because labs and BIS can also know what is the loading of the lab, so that they can take a decision whether they need to increase the lab, or the labs are much enough to take care of all the factories worldwide, and improve the timelines, obviously, because everything is digital, so you can really monitor the timeline. And also, especially on this hard copies, paperwork, whatever the typographical errors, where those are basically getting eliminated. So at the moment, around there is around I will say 25,000 registrations done by BIS, and some of them are expired, some of them are active, like that. So this is basically growing every year, even if there was pandemic, but still BIS registrations have grown a lot in pandemic also. This is basically a very important aspect of STPI. Once this registration is done, so STPI is basically a body who will take care of the kind of an admin part of this whole surveillance. They basically take up the deposit, they take care of the deposit, they interact with the factory. They have a different portal where this registration is done. This is basically only thing is that this is nothing to do with actual surveillance. This is basically that once your R number is being selected for the surveillance, so BIS has all the resources. They have the money, they know the process, they know the factory details, and they know what kind of product you have. Do you have a make to order product, or you have a retail product where the product has to be searched? So this is basically a kind of an advanced thing what they do basically for conducting the surveillance in time, so that they don't have to really go around at that time when the surveillance is being initiated by the BIS and by the MIT and by the STPI. So they also have created a portal for STPI portal. So I think this is quite easy here in terms of that. We need to just add factory address, details, model numbers, model registered in BIS, and like that, so that this will be taken. And here also AIR will play also a role here also, because most of the communication will be done with the AIR. Even the money for the bus surveillance has to be paid by the AIR. That is a better approach of what we see with our customers right now. So this is basically same BIS surveillance. What I told before in terms of that, this will be very random, and you will be given a very stipulated time in which you need to approach STPI and BIS in terms of what is the sample, what is the readiness, and you need to quickly ship the sample to India. Then the lab will be assigned, and that testing will be done. They will now compare this test report and the previous test reports. Anything which is basically very different in nature, the query will be raised. And if it is really something got changed into a product, but nobody told BIS before, or something happened. So we have seen some cases with some clients also, that where the registration was a problem for quite long time. So they cancel the registration for some time, maybe 6 months or 1 year, and then you have to approach the BIS again. So this BIS surveillance is basically very tricky. So that we should try to do a good job here on the BIS surveillance part. Quickly on the wireless part, wireless certification part. Basically, this is basically from the government department called Wireless Planning and Coordination of India. Nothing to do with BIS. It's a completely entirely different department which takes care of wireless. So if any product which has basically Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and if it is in frequency which is basically open, then probably the product has to undergo both the certification. Let us say you have a product which is having Wi-Fi plus it is also part of BIS mandatory list. So then you have to also do WPC plus BIS for the product. So this is basically it. It is basically having two schemes, basically the ATA process and plus import license, and then ATA process plus import permission. So some products which are basically where the frequency is controlled, like drones, radar, satellite communication, TV broadcast transmitters, will have an ATA process, and then other products like wireless speaker, access points, wireless modules, mobile phones will have an ATA ST process, simplified process. In this process also, wireless process also same. Here the advantage is that you could use the ARF reports from the country which is outside India. So if you have already done maybe FCC, or you have done some CE in Europe, and if you have IEC reports, and if you have FCC reports, and if they are RF, and they have taken care of all the things which WPC needs in the test reports, you could use the reports which are from outside India. Here the facility is still there. If not, then you could also test in India. That is also possible. So basically same, you have to keep the test report ready. Some of the documents like declaration, authorization from the manufacturer who is producing this module and who is having this product, and then submit the same file to WPC. Here also the process has gone online, and then they will scrutinize this file, they will scrutinize the test report, and here the timeline is around 4 to 5 weeks to complete it. And here also, but in here the difference in WPC is that WPC is only given to an Indian company, so it is not given to foreign companies. Unlike BIS is basically given to a foreign company, but here WPC will be only given to Indian company, and the license will be given to an AIR in India, or to your office if it is an Indian office. But your name will be also in the certificate as a factory, as a manufacturer, but the certificate will be actually issued to the AIR. So it has also good advantage that it does not have any expiration date unless and until you change something on the product. If you keep the same product, design is same, you can keep the WPC certificate for pretty long time. So this is basically like application details, what we need, like applicant name, equipment name, modulation mode, main functions, frequency range, occupant bandwidth, transmitting power. And we need, if we have to do in-country testing, we need 3 to 5 samples. This is basically some of the requirements for keeping in the report, like measurement of peak radiated power, spectral density, bandwidth, frequency ranges, harmonic emissions. This has to be in their report, and also circuit diagram, test plan, user manual, review label layout. This has to be also used here if you have to do testing in country in India. This is basically a typical format where you will be having a ETA certificate, and it will come with an ETA certificate number. And this certificate you can produce when you are shipping the products to India. You can keep these documents with the logistic company who will be doing the custom clearance. You can submit it there to the custom officer. This will be kind of an process which is basically very smooth if you have the certificate with you. Quickly, I don't know if you have time. Quickly, just wanted to go through TEC. Basically, this is basically for telecom products. This is also basically in the same way how the BIS CRS has started. They also started with phase 1, phase 2, and started 2019 the phase 1 list, and then phase 2 started in October 20. And here also there are basically different products notified at different times. But here it is EMI, EMC, it is safety. There are some technical requirements, there are some safety requirements, security requirements, and other requirements also mentioned in ERs. So every product has its own ER which has defined its technical requirements, which kind of test to be done in EMI, EMC, which kind of test to be done in safety. And there is basically 2 processes involved, where it is basically simple certification scheme and general certification scheme. In simple certification scheme, basically you don't have to submit the test report, but if TEC asks you the test report, you have to immediately send it to the TEC. But in general certification scheme, you have to also submit the test reports with the documentation. And very recently, they also released a phase 3 list, which is, I think, also getting very products which have a great market in US, which are being manufactured and designed in US. So these are basically cellular networks, smart cameras, smart watches, IoT gateways, a lot of equipments which operate in 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz band. And this is basically kind of, and this will basically become mandatory from next year, July 2022. And this is basically the products in phase 3. They also released products in phase 4. This is also mandatory from 1st February 2022, and this is some of the products in phase 4. So you can see the list. This is basically phase 4 1 list, and then the phase 4 second and third list, one on the left hand side, one on the right hand side. This is basically very recently released, but there are a lot of products in it, which is basically coming from US, and I think this is very new in terms of the list which has been released by Telecom Authorities of India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kapil. Sapro, this was wonderful, actually, perfect presentation, because this is a really exciting topic for us in the manufacturing world for all our customers. I know that tech was really exciting topic a couple of years ago, but then the phasing approach was added. We really appreciate it. Thomas and Kapil, if it's okay, I'd like to just check all the questions that have appeared. And at this portion of the presentation, we do have enough time for a few questions, if you're okay to take.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me just check the chat window. So I see some questions in regards to 60950, presumption of conformity, that Safa and Joseph already took care of. I don't see any questions for India, unless I'm having some issues with my chat window. Thomas, do you see any
Oh, I see the
questions?
same thing. There was one from Bonzi. What is the compliance date for list 4 for BIS? Yeah, we went through a lot of different lists. So maybe list 4 for list 5, I'm sorry, for BIS.
1st October, 1st October this year.
Right.
Yes, yes.
And keep in mind that it may also delay. So, you know, India is kind of infamous for this. So, you know, Kapil went through the BIS list. He went through the, you know, the TEC for telecom equipment. So just keep in mind that, you know, and from our experience, you know, literally a month or a week before they would delay it before the deadline. So just keep that in mind. But I think, you know, it's coming. So I would recommend everyone to sort of prepare for it. If it applies to you, obviously.
Thank you. I do see a question coming up from Joseph. What is a typical certification timeline from start to finish if you have an IECE CB report and certificate?
Kapil, you want to take that one?
Yes, yes. So I will start the timeline if the samples are here in India. If the samples are here in India, probably the testing time is basically around 2 to 3 weeks if we have the documents all here and the CB report is also available. And then probably 3 to 4 weeks the BIS takes into the registration and checking the documents. So I will say probably if we add up and sum this, maybe probably around 6 to 7 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks.
Right. And let me add to the fact that keep in mind that the AIR fulfills a very important function in coordinating everything in parallel. So that has to happen. And then all the communication that BIS will have will communicate directly to the AIR, the authorized Indian representative. That's another reason why it's important to vet your AIR if you don't have an office in India. And even if you do, you know, that person that is responsible in India for your company should understand this process. So there is a twofold issue there, right?
Thank you. I do have, there's a one more question that's come up. Let's double check just if question answered provided by Joseph is good. For you, Joseph, are you satisfied with the answer? Do you have any follow-up question?
Yes, I appreciate having the timetable. My past experience was some years ago with EX, and at the time it was taking about 6 months because you had to go in person to do certain activities and offices would not necessarily be open.
Yes, yes. I think here I think I would like to correct here. Sorry, I think what we were referring to, really about this IT and ITE and audio video kind of products which are listed. But then EX basically comes into what I told you little bit brief about this BIS ISI. That's a different marking, but then that timeline has not changed. That is still 6 months, and even actually it is basically at the moment more, because actually there are no auditors available to travel abroad from India. So at the moment there are no audits happening. So that timeline is actually more than 6 months right now for that kind of scheme.
All right, so it's a little confusing. Just to clarify, there's BIS for certain product categories, and then even like water cooler will fall under ISI, which is also mandatory. So I think that's, it's the point that Kapil, earlier mentioned about the HS code. It's really important for us to navigate through what are the mandatory requirements once we have the product information as well as the HS code. So yeah, for hazardous locations equipment, that's a whole different ballgame.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Now, Kapil gave a extensive or a comprehensive list, I should say, about information required for submitting. Excuse me. But my past experience is when you are developing a product to save some time, you start doing the application ahead of time, and then there are a lot of documents not available or still in process of being made. How would you coordinate that? Because timeline is to ship is this, but development time and getting equipment ready to other certification takes time. So how do you
great question,
coordinate?
Bansi. I mean, I can take that. I mean, Kapil, feel free to jump in if something I'm saying is not correct. So, part of what we do is to figure out what is the minimum requirements that these, either the certification bodies, BIS, or the lab requires. So if there's any information that you do not have at hand, do communicate that to companies like us so we can, that's one of the reasons why we have Kapil on the ground there, right? He can actually go to the lab, he can go to BIS and be able to sort of negotiate, or it's all a communication. I think all of us are in compliance. We understand how critical on-time communication, set the expectation. So to answer your question, Bansi, it's case by case. So if you have some critical information that we need, then obviously that needs to happen. But then if there's supplementary information, we can certainly, Kapil has the ability to assist you to provide the minimum, just to satisfy. It's like a checkbox, right? They check box, back, and done. So that's how you would, facilitate the timeline to meet the timeline, and working things in parallel.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad you explained that, because a lot of times what happens is in past when we submitted something, guys said I have 10 things on my checklist. You gave me only 8.
Correct.
So your application sits there.
Right.
And
to be,
for example,
quite frank with you, that's why you pay the big bucks to a company like us or UL or NEMCO, because we're able to kind of fast track it based on our experience, as well as what we understand. What is the minimum, right?
Yeah, I'm all for having labs who have experience and have done this before.
Huge difference.
Big difference. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed there's a couple of more questions. Do we still have on time, Maja?
Yes, you can take a couple more. Okay. We have about 5 minutes. It's a break right now. So
perfect. I think, Wayne actually has a question regarding battery tool and with Bluetooth radio, safety and EMI reports for radio module and tool with radio available. Battery is BIS registered. Is any in-country testing required? Kapil, you want to take that?
What is the product? I think 1 minute. I will. Is this question in the chat tool, or is this? Question?
It's in the chat. Yeah, it's in the chat. Yep. So it's a battery tool. So I'm sure there's a battery. That's the lithium-ion battery, probably, and a charger, and then it's wireless.
Okay. See. Okay. Let me put it into 2 things. One is, see, One is, let us take the BIS for this product. So you have to do first the cell. Okay, well, I think for the battery. See, first thing is that we need to be very sure about this tool, what you are saying, because you have not named the product. You are saying it's a tool. So first and foremost is this tool coming under the mandatory list or not? That is first thing what we have to do. If it is, then probably the battery, the cell, the battery, and this tool has to undergo the BIS CRS registration. What I explained the process. Let us say scenario 2. The scenario 2 is, let us say we talk about that this tool is not coming under CRS scheme because the product description, the HS code does not match. So this is not basically anywhere coming into the mandatory list. So what we need to do, if the cell and battery is basically removable and they can be taken out, then they are chargeable batteries, rechargeable batteries, then we have to do cell and battery registration. So this is 2 scenarios with regards to BIS safety. Bluetooth, every Bluetooth has to undergo WPC registration. So if you have a Bluetooth, if you have a Wi-Fi, you have to go for WPC registration. What you can do is, what your question is, that yes, I may not be able to use your AMI EMC reports, but if you have an RF report anywhere from US lab or from any other lab, I can use your RF reports and submit it to the WPC with some more documents. So you need not to have to do in-country testing for wireless part or for the Bluetooth part, but for the battery, for the cell, for the tool, you have to do the in-country testing. There you have to do in-country testing.
Right, and I just want to ask Kapil something. For the wireless, is it any test report, even coming from the manufacturer, or does it have to be an accredited test lab?
No, any lab, but which is basically where there is an ILAC or an A2LA approval or similar approvals, but from different countries. Let us say if it is a European lab, it's DUX, if it is UKCS, and if it is any other, but it has to be ISO 17025 accredited lab, and which also have a whole scope of RF into the ISO 17025 scope. So all the tests which are basically done on that product for the RF, those have to be into the scope, and the whole scope has to be also submitted with the document. So WPC also checks the scope of the lab, 17025 lab, and its accreditation dates, its accreditation certificates also.
Got it. And for wireless, just to make sure everybody understands, it's I believe India is completely harmonized with the RED as well as the FCC, right?
Yes. Do you have any additional question, Ryan, on what we said?
No, we have enough time, but there's one last question. For WPC registrations, is it mandatory to have full radio testing on the host product versus using RF reports on the module?
I think this is a great question. I think I answer this question every 2 days, I will say, frankly speaking. See, I will say, this is basically, there are a lot of scenarios for these answers. I should get more details, but let me still answer very generically. So let us say you have the module from XYZ company, and you are putting into a product which is basically from your company, and then you are selling it to India. See, now the most important is, what is your kind of a network in India? Let us say you have your own offices, you have a set partner in India, and you have a lot of resources in India. I will say, if you have a lot of resources in India, you can use those module reports, and you can still take the WPC registration for that module. That is possible, but only if you have a lot of resources available in India. Because the reason being, the customs always will ask you that your product is model number 123, but the report is basically for XY2 module. Then it does not match. So you have to keep some resources available, which will explain them, that the logistics guy will go back to them, explain them this, that, sir, this is a module inside. We have taken the WPC for the module. Here is the registration certificate for ATA for it. and you can see it, but this is only possible there, and you may need to explain this bit. I only suggest this only if you have a good logistics partner in India. He is very cooperative and he is basically technical. He understands all of this, and he can also understand the custom officer. Then, or you have your own office and you can let one of your employees to go and visit that custom officer. This is possible. But if you don't have a lot of resources in India and you are very handful and maybe you are working only with distributors and traders or through e-commerce, I will.
Hay un jamón y queso. Y hágase un cafecito.
Translations, please.
I
think someone was not on mute. Sorry, it's okay. Go ahead, Kapil. Kapil, may I just ask, the scenario I'm most curious of is, like in US, FCC recommends testing the host, but doesn't mandate. So in Europe, it's, kind of customer can do a risk assessment if they don't want to test the host once they're incorporating a module. So a lot of customers rely on RF, on the radio reports, and some manufacturers will do a spot check on the host instead of doing the full RF testing, because they're relying on the radio module reports. So I was curious, how does India WPC feel when applying for the WPC certificate? Will they allow the host to be approved using the radio module report, RF report and EMC report on the host? I think
it is basically it is basically a host report. You will get a host WPC ATA. Module report, you will get a ATA for module. So you cannot say that I will give you a module report and you give me an ATA for the host. No.
Right. I think, I can clarify real quickly, Kapil. I think Manja's question is, in the US, if you have a module that is put into a system, a product, and if that module already has FCC approval, then you don't have to redo the wireless for the entire system. Correct, Manja?
Yes.
So in India, does that model apply, or do you still have to go through the WPC for the end product, even though the module already has WPC?
No. I think what I explained before, what I told before, like if you have a module report, you can get ATA for the module only. You cannot get ATA for the product.
Correct. So
but if you're,
I guess the answer is no, Manja. You still have to go through, just like China. I mean, China is getting a little bit better for SRC, but still, the bottom line is you have to repeat the test for the entire product.
That's the feedback that I'm seeing too. There are some agents that are saying that you can use the radio module, but there is a little bit of a conflict in.
There's a little caveat, and certainly if you have anything,
I agree with
discuss offline.
Yeah. I agree with Kapil saying this is what we've seen from the authority too. Thank you so much, Kapil. Well, we're on top of the hour. Everyone's there, Bansis, thank you for your great comment. Great presentation, lots of details. Good job. I agree. You guys are done fantastic job. So thank you. And if any remaining questions, please, anyone on the call, do not hesitate to reach out through platform directly to Kapil and Thomas through the platform of this iSpice event. We do have several other presentations ongoing. The next one that I will be hosting for you is going to be on a super hot topic coming up at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Central. What's changing in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia market. So thank you all for attending this presentation by Thomas Ha and Kapil